Consider the relentless march of moments, each one slipping into the past. A quiet yearning for authenticity, for a path truly one's own. So, as you reflect upon your own journey, consider this. What one small, courageous step can you take this week, guided by these ancient insights, to align your life more closely with your true self, and thus sow the seeds for a future free of this most profound human regret? The answer lies within you. This profound regret is often discovered only in life's final chapters. Nurses in palliative care hear these confessions, these heartfelt laments. Bronnie Ware, a notable caregiver, chronicled these poignant final reflections. She observed a recurring theme, a pattern in these parting words, a wish expressed with clarity and sorrow by many souls. What is this potent regret that transcends cultures and backgrounds? It's not about adventures missed, though that can be a part. Nor is it primarily about unspoken love, though that too echoes. The number one regret is more fundamental to our very being. Within this flow, a subtle current of unease often whispers to us. It concerns the self, the authentic self, often suppressed or ignored. Imagine carrying a song within you and never letting it sound, or a vibrant color hidden beneath layers of imposed gray. This regret is about the life unlived, the true self unexpressed, living according to others' expectations, not one's own inner compass. The fear of judgment, of disapproval, often steers the ship, leading to a quiet despair when the performance of life nears its end. I wish I'd had the courage. The lament begins, a common refrain. To live a life true to myself, the core of the sorrow. Not the life others expected of me, the heavy chain acknowledged. The shadow of hindsight looms, a reflection on paths not taken. This single regret encapsulates a universe of lost personal potential. It is the pain of self-betrayal, recognized too late for many. The weight of unspoken dreams and desires finally felt fully. A yearning for authenticity that echoes in the quiet of departure. But what if this knowledge could be a guide, not an epitaph? What if ancient wisdom already held the keys to this courage? Philosophy, often seen as abstract, offers intensely practical tools here. It teaches us how to define ourselves, how to live deliberately, to align our actions with our deepest, most authentic values now. So this most common regret, living a life untrue to oneself. Choices made and choices deferred echo through the corridors of memory. Let us explore how ancient thought can help us chart a truer course. The profound words, I wish I'd had the courage to live a life true to myself, not the life others expected of me, echo a universal human struggle. This isn't merely about unfulfilled ambitions, but a deeper disconnect from one's core identity. It is the quiet tragedy of allowing external pressures, societal norms, or the fears of others to dictate the narrative of one's own existence, leading to a life that feels, in the end, like a role played rather than a truth lived. Why is this regret so pervasive? Often, it stems from a lifetime of prioritizing harmony or approval over personal authenticity. The fear of disappointing loved ones, the anxiety of not fitting in, or the comfort of a well-trodden path can subtly erode the courage needed to listen to and act upon one's inner voice. Over time, this internal compass becomes muted, and the true self, with its unique desires and potentials, remains unexpressed, leading to this poignant end-of-life realization. Fortunately, philosophy offers potent antidotes. It is not a dry academic pursuit, but a practical guide to living well, to understanding ourselves and our place in the world. Three particular streams of thought, Stoicism, Existentialism, and Mindfulness, provide powerful frameworks and actionable principles to help us cultivate the courage to live authentically, thereby minimizing the fertile ground upon which such deep regrets can grow. Stoicism, originating in ancient Greece with thinkers like Zeno and later Roman philosophers such as Seneca, Epictetus, and Marcus Aurelius, teaches the development of self-control and fortitude as a means of overcoming destructive emotions. It emphasizes focusing on what is within our power, our thoughts, judgments, and actions, and accepting what is not. This distinction is crucial for living authentically, as it frees us from the anxiety of external validation and others' opinions. The Stoic concept of the inner citadel refers to an unassailable fortress of virtue and reason within ourselves. By cultivating this inner strength, we become less susceptible to external pressures that might lead us away from our true path. If our self-worth is derived from our commitment to virtue and living in accordance with nature, our rational nature, then the expectations of others lose their power to dictate our choices. This fosters the courage to be true to oneself. Epictetus, once a slave, powerfully articulated the dichotomy of control. He urged us to distinguish between what we can influence and what we cannot. We cannot control others' opinions, societal trends, or accidents of fate, but we can control our responses, our judgments, and our actions. Living authentically from a Stoic perspective means aligning these controllable aspects with our core values, regardless of external approval or disapproval, thus building a life of integrity. Seneca, a statesman and playwright, wrote extensively on living a life of purpose and facing adversity with resilience. He emphasized the importance of self-examination and aligning one's life with reason and virtue. For Seneca, living true to oneself wasn't about indulging every whim, but about consciously choosing a path guided by wisdom and inner conviction, even if it meant standing apart from the crowd or facing hardship. This builds the moral courage necessary for authenticity. Marcus Aurelius, the Roman emperor, in his Meditations, constantly reminded himself to live in accordance with his nature and principles, despite the immense pressures of his position. He stressed inner discipline, service to humanity based on his rational understanding of the cosmos, and indifference to external fame or criticism. Therefore, Stoicism directly addresses the regret of not living true to oneself by equipping us with the mental tools to define our values, focus on our own actions, and cultivate an inner resilience against external pressures. It teaches that true freedom and happiness come not from conforming to others' expectations, but from living a life of virtue and integrity, guided by our own reason and conscience. This is the essence of Stoic authenticity. What if the most profound regrets are known before life's end? Existentialism, a philosophical movement that gained prominence in the mid-20th century with thinkers like Jean-Paul Sartre, Simone de Beauvoir, and Albert Camus, offers another powerful lens. Its core tenet, particularly in Sartre's formulation, is existence precedes essence. This means humans are born without a predefined purpose or nature. We first exist, and then through our choices and actions, we define who we are. We create our own essence. This emphasis on radical freedom and responsibility is central to overcoming the regret of inauthenticity. If we are truly free to define ourselves, then living according to others' expectations is an act of bad faith, a denial of our own freedom, and a refusal to take responsibility for creating our meaning. Albert Camus, in The Myth of Sisyphus, explored the idea of the absurd, the conflict between humanity's desire to find inherent meaning in life and the apparent meaninglessness of the universe. Yet, Camus did not advocate despair. Instead, he suggested that we can find freedom and even happiness by recognizing and embracing the absurd, by rebelling against it through living passionately and creating our own meaning in a meaningless world. Living authentically, in an existentialist sense, means consciously choosing one's values and projects and committing to them. It's about taking ownership of one's life narrative. The regret of living a life dictated by others is precisely what existentialism warns against. It calls us to confront the anxiety of freedom, anguish, and to make choices that affirm our self-created identity, thereby forging a life that is genuinely our own, even in the face of an indifferent universe. Simone de Beauvoir expanded existentialist thought to explore the nature of the other, and the societal constructs that limit women's freedom to define themselves. Her work underscores how deeply societal expectations can be internalized, leading individuals to live inauthentic lives by conforming to prescribed roles rather than forging their own paths based on their unique capacities and desires. Existentialism, therefore, directly tackles the one regret by placing the responsibility for creating a meaningful and authentic life squarely on the individual. It champions the courage to choose oneself, to define one's own essence through actions and commitments, rather than passively accepting a definition imposed by society or others. This path, while demanding, is the path away from the sorrow of a life unlived according to one's true self. Finally, mindfulness, with roots in Buddhist traditions but increasingly secularized, offers a practical path to self-awareness, which is foundational to living authentically. Mindfulness involves paying attention to the present moment, our thoughts, feelings, bodily sensations, and surrounding environment, without judgment. This practice helps us to observe our habitual patterns of thought and reaction, many of which are conditioned by external expectations rather than our true desires. By cultivating non-judgmental awareness, we can begin to distinguish between our authentic inner voice and the chorus of external demands or internalized shoulds. Mindfulness creates a space between stimulus, e.g., someone's expectation and response, allowing us to choose a reply that aligns with our values rather than reacting automatically out of fear or habit. This conscious choosing is a cornerstone of an authentic life, preventing us from drifting into a life that isn't truly ours. This practice helps dismantle the fear of disapproval that so often leads to inauthenticity. When we observe our fears and anxieties without judgment, they begin to lose their power over us. We realize that these fears are often just thoughts, not immutable truths. This empowers us to make choices based on what truly matters to us, rather than being driven by the desire to avoid criticism or gain approval, which is a key aspect of not living the life others expect. Mindfulness also enhances our connection to our own genuine feelings and desires. In the quiet of mindful awareness, we can hear the subtle whispers of our heart, the things that bring us true joy and fulfillment, which may have been drowned out by the noise of external obligations. Honoring these authentic feelings and making choices that align with them is crucial for avoiding the regret of a life lived for others, and instead, living a life that feels deeply and truly our own. A common sorrow surfaces when people face their own mortality directly. Thus, mindfulness fosters the self-awareness and emotional regulation necessary to navigate the pressures of external expectations and to connect with our authentic selves. It provides a practical means to cultivate the inner clarity and calm required to make conscious choices aligned with our deepest values, steering us away from a life of regret and towards a life of genuine presence and purpose. It is a gentle yet powerful path to self-discovery and authentic living. So we see three distinct yet complementary philosophical paths: Stoicism, with its emphasis on inner virtue and control; Existentialism, championing radical freedom and self-creation; and Mindfulness, cultivating present-moment awareness and self-acceptance. Each, in its own way, offers profound wisdom and practical strategies to address that most common and heartbreaking regret: wishing one had lived a life true to oneself, not the life others expected. The Stoic reminds us that our true worth lies not in external accolades or the approval of others, but in the quality of our character and the integrity of our actions. By focusing on cultivating virtues like wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance, and by accepting what we cannot change, we build an unshakable inner foundation. This allows us to navigate societal pressures without losing our own moral compass, ensuring our life choices are authentically ours. Consider the immense pressure to conform to societal definitions of success, wealth, status, or a particular career path. A Stoic approach would encourage us to question whether these external goals align with our inner values. If not, pursuing them would lead to inauthenticity. Instead, Stoicism guides us to define success in terms of living virtuously and fulfilling our duties according to reason, regardless of whether this brings conventional rewards or recognition from others. The fear of being different, of being misunderstood or ostracized, is a powerful deterrent to authentic living. Stoicism counters this by teaching us to value our own reasoned judgment above the opinions of the multitude. If we are convinced our path is rational and virtuous, the disapproval of others becomes an indifferent, something outside our control and not essential to our well-being or eudaimonia flourishing. This fosters immense courage. Imagine a family expectation to follow a certain profession. A Stoic would first examine if this profession aligns with their nature and virtues. If it doesn't, they would use reason to explain their alternative path, accept any ensuing disapproval with equanimity, as it's external, and proceed with their chosen course if it is deemed more virtuous and aligned with their rational self. Their peace comes from within, not from familial approval. This Stoic courage isn't about aggressive defiance, but a quiet, steadfast commitment to one's inner principles. It's understanding that true contentment arises from a life lived in harmony with reason and virtue, not from the fleeting approval that comes from conforming to expectations that compromise one's integrity. This is how Stoicism helps avoid that profound regret of an inauthentic life. The existentialist, on the other hand, would approach this regret by highlighting the profound responsibility that comes with our freedom. If we allow others' expectations to define us, we are, in Sartre's terms, living in bad faith, avoiding the burden and the glory of creating ourselves. The regret stems from this abdication of freedom, from realizing one has lived as an object shaped by others, rather than as a subject forging one's own destiny. To live authentically, the existentialist urges us to confront the anguish of choice, the realization that we and we alone are responsible for the meaning our life takes. There are no pre-written scripts, no divine blueprints. This can be terrifying, but it is also liberating. Choosing to live true to oneself means embracing this responsibility, defining one's own values and acting in accordance with them, even if it means facing uncertainty or societal friction. Consider the pressure to marry and have children by a certain age, a common societal expectation. An existentialist approach would involve questioning whether this path genuinely aligns with one's self-defined project of life. If it does, then pursuing it is authentic. If it doesn't, then succumbing to the pressure would be an act of bad faith. Authenticity here demands the courage to choose a different path if it's more true to one's self-created essence, even if it means being an outlier. It's not about material wealth, or fame, or grand achievements primarily. The existentialist hero is not necessarily a rebel without a cause, but someone who consciously chooses their commitments and lives by them. It could be Sisyphus finding meaning in his struggle, or an artist pouring their soul into their work, or an individual dedicating themselves to a cause they believe in. The key is that the choice is freely made and authentically owned, transforming even a seemingly absurd existence into a meaningful one, thereby preempting that ultimate regret. This philosophy doesn't promise happiness in the conventional sense, but rather the satisfaction of a life lived with purpose and integrity, a life that is one's own. By embracing our freedom and the responsibility that comes with it, we affirm our existence and create a personal essence that is true. This courageous act of self-creation is the existentialist antidote to the regret of living a life dictated by others. Mindfulness, in its gentle way, helps us tune into the present moment where life is actually lived. So much of living for others is driven by anxieties about the future. What will they think? Or regrets about the past. I should have pleased them. Mindfulness anchors us in the now, allowing us to connect with our immediate experience, our bodily sensations, emotions, and thoughts, without the usual layer of judgment or storytelling that is often colored by others' expectations. Through mindful observation, we can start to see the patterns of our conditioning. We might notice an automatic urge to agree with someone even when we feel differently, or a tendency to downplay our own needs to accommodate others. Mindfulness doesn't demand we instantly change these patterns, but by simply noticing them without criticism, we create the space for conscious choice. There's that urge to please again. Is this what I truly want? This awareness is key to untangling our authentic desires from the web of external influences. If we are constantly striving to meet others' expectations, we may not even know what we truly want. Mindfulness practices, like meditation or simply paying attention to everyday activities, help quiet the external noise and the internal chatter, allowing our own subtle preferences, passions, and values to emerge. This is the first step to living true to them. Furthermore, mindfulness cultivates self-compassion. When we inevitably stumble or realize we've been living inauthentically, the tendency can be harsh self-criticism. Mindfulness encourages us to meet these realizations with kindness and understanding, just as we would a friend. This compassionate stance makes it easier to make changes and move towards a more authentic life, rather than being paralyzed by guilt or shame, which often reinforces conformity. Imagine being in a social situation where you feel pressured to express an opinion you don't hold. A mindful approach would involve noticing the physical sensations of discomfort, a tight chest, a knot in the stomach, observing the thought, "I should just agree to avoid conflict," and then creating a small pause. In that pause, you can access your authentic self and choose to express your view respectfully, or to remain silent but consciously, not out of fear. This ability to respond consciously rather than react automatically is crucial for navigating the myriad expectations we face daily from family, friends, work, and society. Each conscious choice to align with our inner truth, however small, strengthens our capacity for authentic living and chips away at the foundation of potential future regret. Mindfulness provides the presence of mind to make those choices, moment by moment. Therefore, these philosophical traditions, Stoicism, Existentialism, and mindfulness, are not mere intellectual curiosities. They are potent, practical guides for the art of living. They offer us frameworks to understand ourselves, to define our values, to cultivate courage, to embrace freedom, and to live with awareness. Each provides a unique pathway towards a life that is deeply and truly our own, a life less likely to end with that most poignant regret. The regret of not living true to oneself often arises from a lifetime of small compromises, of prioritizing external validation over internal alignment. It's the accumulation of moments where we chose the path of least resistance, or the path someone else laid out for us, instead of daring to chart our own course based on what genuinely resonated with our deepest self. Philosophy helps us interrupt this pattern before it becomes a life story. The regret speaks of something far more personal, more deeply intrinsic. Stoicism teaches us to build an inner fortress of virtue, making us less susceptible to the winds of public opinion. It asks, is this in my control? Does this align with virtue? If we live by these questions, our choices will be internally driven, authentic, and we will be less likely to look back wishing we had pleased ourselves rather than the crowd, for our pleasure would derive from virtuous action. Existentialism throws down the gauntlet of freedom. You are condemned to be free. Create yourself. It reminds us that every choice contributes to our self-definition. To avoid the regret of inauthenticity is to courageously embrace this freedom, to make choices, big and small, that reflect the person we want to become, regardless of whether those choices fit a pre-approved mold. It is to author our own life story with intention. Mindfulness offers the gentle path of awareness. Observe without judgment. Know thyself. By becoming intimately familiar with our inner landscape, our thoughts, emotions, and true desires, we can distinguish them from the noise of external expectations. This clarity allows us to navigate life with greater intention, making choices that are truly congruent with who we are, moment by present moment, leading to a life felt deeply and authentically. Ultimately, avoiding the one regret of the dying is not about achieving some grand, dramatic act of rebellion against expectations. More often, it is about the consistent, quiet courage to make daily choices that honor our inner truth. It's about listening to that subtle voice within, cultivating self-awareness, and daring to align our outer life with our inner landscape, even when it's uncomfortable or unpopular. This involves asking ourselves difficult questions regularly. Am I living in a way that feels true to me? Are my daily actions reflecting my deepest values? If I were on my deathbed today, what would I wish I had done differently regarding how I lived true to myself? The answers can guide us towards small, incremental adjustments that compound over time into a life of greater authenticity. It's about choosing the career that ignites your passion, even if it's less prestigious. It's about nurturing relationships that are genuine and supportive of your true self, not just convenient or expected. It's about expressing your thoughts and feelings honestly, even when it's vulnerable. It's about pursuing hobbies and interests that bring you joy, regardless of their perceived utility or status by others. The philosophies we've explored don't offer easy answers or a life devoid of difficulty. Living authentically often requires more courage than conforming. It can mean facing disapproval, uncertainty, or the discomfort of going against the grain. However, these traditions suggest that the peace and fulfillment derived from a life lived true to oneself far outweigh the temporary comforts of conformity. The alternative, as witnessed by those at life's end, is a deep and sorrowful regret for the life unlived, for the self unexpressed. This is a powerful motivator to examine our own lives now, while time and choice are still ours. The wisdom of the ages encourages us not to wait until the final curtain to consider whether we are the true authors of our own story. So the primary regret is not about external failures, but internal ones. The failure to listen to oneself, the failure to honor one's own path, the failure of courage to be who you truly are. It's a profound misalignment between the life lived and the life that yearned to be lived from within. Philosophy offers a compass and a map to navigate towards that inner alignment. Key takeaway 1. Identify your core values. What truly matters to you, independent of external approval. Stoicism and existentialism both stress the importance of self-defined principles as the bedrock of an authentic life. Take time for introspection to clarify these guiding lights. Write them down. Let them inform your choices. It involves the courage to be, against the weight of expectation. Key takeaway 2. Cultivate self-awareness. Mindfulness is the direct path here. Practice observing your thoughts, emotions, and bodily sensations without judgment. This creates the space to distinguish your authentic voice from internalized expectations or conditioned reactions, empowering conscious choice rather than automatic conformity. Key takeaway 3. Practice courage in small steps. Authenticity isn't usually born in one grand gesture but cultivated through consistent small acts of courage. Express a genuine opinion. Pursue a neglected interest. Set a boundary. Each small step builds the muscle of authenticity and diminishes the fear of disapproval, as Stoicism would advocate. Key takeaway 4. Embrace responsibility for your choices. Existentialism reminds us that we are the authors of our lives. Own your choices and their consequences. This doesn't mean you control everything, as Stoicism clarifies, but you control your responses and commitments. Living true to yourself means taking responsibility for creating a life that reflects your chosen values. Key takeaway 5. Redefine your relationship with failure and disapproval. Living authentically may involve paths that others don't understand or approve of, and not all endeavors will succeed conventionally. Stoicism teaches indifference to external opinions and outcomes beyond our control. Existentialism sees value in the committed struggle itself. Mindfulness helps us process disappointment without self-condemnation. Reflect on the life you are currently building. Are the blueprints drawn from your own deepest desires and values, or are they borrowed, perhaps unconsciously, from the expectations of those around you, or society at large? It's never too late to pick up the pen and begin redrafting your own story, guided by these timeless philosophical insights. The wisdom is ancient, yet its relevance is immediate. The call to authenticity echoes through the ages because it speaks to a fundamental human yearning for a life that is not just lived, but deeply felt and genuinely expressed. To heed this call is to embark on a path that, while perhaps challenging, is ultimately the most rewarding journey of all. In summary, the most common regret voiced by those at the end of life is the wish that they had lived a life true to themselves, not the life others expected. This profound sorrow arises from a disconnect with one's authentic self, often due to prioritizing external approval or fearing disapproval, leading to a life that feels unfulfilled and not truly one's own. Philosophy, particularly Stoicism, existentialism, and mindfulness, offers powerful tools to counteract this. Stoicism builds inner resilience and virtue-based decision-making. Existentialism champions the freedom and responsibility to create one's own meaning and essence. Mindfulness cultivates the self-awareness necessary to hear one's true voice and make conscious, authentic choices in the present moment. These are not just theories, but practical paths. By integrating these principles, clarifying values, embracing freedom, cultivating awareness, and practicing courage, we can consciously construct a life that aligns with our deepest self. This proactive engagement with our own life narrative is the most effective way to ensure that when we look back, it is with a sense of peace and fulfillment, rather than the haunting regret of a life lived for others. The insights from those who have faced life's end are a profound gift, a reminder of what truly matters. Their number one regret serves not as a condemnation, but as an invitation to live more courageously, more authentically, more presently, starting today. The choice, as philosophy illuminates, is always ours.